Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at source material that takes some incredibly complex, really volatile geopolitical events, and it synthesizes them with a very specific, and I mean highly literal, interpretation of religious prophecy.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Our mission here is to navigate a really powerful and urgent narrative. The sources we're analyzing, they suggest that all these things that seem unrelated, policy shifts in Jerusalem, the rise of digital surveillance, are actually, according to them, definitive signs.
Signs of a divine timeline.
Exactly. A timeline that signals the beginning of the tribulation and the arrival of a figure they call the Antichrist. The authors are just. There's certain, these pieces all fit together.
And what's so fascinating here is just the sheer scale of it. I mean, the way the authors pull together ancient prophecy, modern politics, emerging tech.
Digital IDs, AI, all of it. And they knit it into this single urgent warning. Now, it's really crucial we state, we're here to analyze this material impartially. We're trying to understand the author's claims, their interpretations, and the very specific timeline they believe we're all living under right now.
And if there's one geographic epicenter to this entire narrative, it has to be the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. So our first section is really focused on how ready, both physically and ritually, sources claim the stage is set for a third temple.
That's the core of it right there.
The suggestion is that, all the remaining barriers, theological and physical, are basically gone.
Yeah, that's the main insight. It's not about speculation anymore for these authors. They present what they see as evidence of immediate readiness, and they put immense significance on the reported red heifer sacrifice.
It's the first in 2 millennia, they claim.
Exactly. For the authors, this is the foundational step. The ashes from that specific sacrifice are, they're the essential component for the purification rites that have to happen before the temple can even be built.
So this ritual readiness, it collapses the whole prophetic timeline for them.
It makes the argument for urgency undeniable, in their view.
And it's not just the ashes they're focused on. The sources say that everything, literally everything, is prepared. We're talking priestly robes, vessels, instruments.
And they even claim to know where the Ark of the Covenant is located.
Which is a huge claim.
A massive claim. The feeling you get from reading this is that every piece of the puzzle is on the table, just waiting for a political green light.
And to really underscore that immediacy, there are these reports cited in the material, unconfirmed, saying the third temple structure itself has been prefab built?
Yeah, prefab built. Think modular construction.
A prefab temple. I mean, that's a detail you don't hear every day.
Yeah.
What's the claimed timeline for putting it together?
The sources suggest that once the site is cleared, the whole structure could be assembled right there on the Temple Mount in as little as 3 days, maybe a week.
3 days.
The speed is the point. It highlights this belief that the second geopolitical restrictions lift, construction will be almost instantaneous. No time for global reaction or intervention.
The speed is definitely striking. So, if this is all about setting the stage, what role does the temple play once it's built, according to this prophetic framework?
And this is where the preparation connects directly to the terror they warn about. The source material is emphatic about the central, terrifying role of the Temple Mount.
Because
the authors assert that the Antichrist, who they specifically interpret as the coming Jewish Messiah, will sit in that temple, fulfilling a key prophecy.
And the timeline they propose for this is incredibly precise, right? Within that 7-year tribulation period.
That's right. The construction is the stage setter. It happens right before or at the very start of the tribulation. And the authors state that exactly 3.5 years, the middle of the 7 years, that is when the Antichrist figure will enter the temple and claim to be God.
So for these authors, seeing these physical preparations means we are right on the cusp of that moment.
Yeah. The immediate cusp.
So the stage is ritually set. But for a temple to actually be built, you need political movement.
Yeah.
And that brings us to these sudden policy shifts that the source calls unprecedented breakthroughs on the Temple Mount.
Right. These are viewed as the practical engine that's driving the prophetic timeline forward.
So this section really emphasizes political will just overriding everything that came before.
It does. The sources detail a very specific, very aggressive political shift. They highlight a statement from the Minister of National Security, Ben-Gvir.
What did he say?
The authors really emphasize this. He addressed to the incoming district commander and declared, quote, "The Temple Mount is ours forever and ever. This kind of rhetoric is interpreted as the start of a decisive move towards full Israeli sovereignty over the site.
And this wasn't just talk, there were also major personnel changes on the ground, correct?
Yes, the sources claim the previous commander, who had been, maintaining the very strict established status quo, was strategically replaced.
Replaced by who?
By a longtime friend and associate of Ben-Gvir. The sources, they label this new commander a yes man. Someone who is expected to just rapidly implement the security minister's wishes to correct what the minister sees as discrimination against the Jews on the Temple Mount.
So it's framed as clearing the bureaucratic hurdles.
So the shift can happen fast.
And it's so important to remember the context here, the legal conflict. Since 1967, the status quo has pretty much restricted Jewish and Christian prayer there to avoid conflict, a policy maintained by the Muslim Jordanian Waqf.
And the source views these changes, the personnel and the policy, as the direct mechanism to dismantle that agreement.
And according to the source, this dismantling produced immediate tangible results, the so-called breakthroughs during Hanukkah 2025.
Yes, they're presented as concrete proof that the status quo is failing.
So what were these unprecedented acts? What happened that indicates this fundamental change?
The sources cite 3 key acts. First, a menorah, or a kanika, was lit on the Temple Mount for the first time in modern history. Apparently, multiple past attempts had been foiled by police.
Okay, that's one.
Second, Jews were reportedly allowed to pray openly from their siddurim, their formal prayer books. And third, and this is a big one for them, a Jew was seen ascending the Temple Mount wearing tefillin.
The leather strips.
The leather strips for binding the Torah, yeah. And previously, any of those 3 acts would have resulted in immediate police intervention.
So the fact that these rituals are now happening openly is, for the authors, proof. Proof that the political control needed for the Third Temple is now fully in place.
That's the exact connection they're making. The political move allows the menorah, which then leads directly to the possibility of construction. It's a narrative loop.
And they also mention geopolitical action from outside the region.
They do. They point to legislation introduced by a U.S. representative. The goal of that legislation is to grant Israel sovereignty over the Temple Mount and legally end all restrictions on Jewish and Christian prayer there.
So the authors see this as making the construction legally plausible on an international scale.
Exactly. And they also mention a sort of related detail about Ben-Gvir's separate efforts to outlaw the Islamic call to prayer in Israel, unless it's state approved for volume and location.
So it suggests a broader push to assert control over the whole religious soundscape, not just the physical site.
All right, all of it. The policy shifts, the worship breakthroughs, the U.S. legislation, it's all interpreted by the authors as one massive, coordinated effort to regain control so that prefab Third Temple can be assembled.
And this jump we're making here, from local security policy all the way to a global political figure, it really shows how wide the authors cast their net for signs. Which brings us to Section 3, this idea of a global convergence.
This is where they really start to synthesize things. Political figures with ancient prophecy. The source material repeatedly links the figure of Donald Trump through banners, and even a Third Temple coin issued with his image to the Persian king Cyrus.
Okay, why Cyrus specifically?
Well, Cyrus was the Gentile king in the Bible who enabled the Jews to return and rebuild the Second Temple. So the authors use this comparison to frame Trump as the modern Gentile political catalyst.
The one required to clear the way for their prophesied Messiah.
Who, and this is crucial, the source identifies as the Antichrist figure, so it frames the former U.S. president as fulfilling prophecy, whether he knows it or not.
And this messianic anticipation isn't just in politics. It seems to be stirring in Jewish communities too. The source describes messianic fervor, citing young boys in Jerusalem, and even Jewish men marching in Brooklyn, New York, singing Messiah.
Yes, Messiah. The authors interpret this public parading and singing as evidence that these communities have what they call inside news, a sense of impending arrival.
And that they're actively anticipating the figure the source calls the biblical Antichrist.
That's their interpretation.
This political nexus also extends to global governance. The source details a prophecy of a board of peace, which Trump is supposedly going to announce.
And the authors link this proposed board directly to the biblical 10 kings. The 10 kings from which the Antichrist will allegedly rise.
What is this board supposed to do?
Well, the source describes it as a body that would supersede nations when it comes to war and treaties. So the authors interpret this as the formation of the prophetic kings without a kingdom.
Establishing global authority and paving the way for the Antichrist to seize control.
That's the idea. And you also see this fervor becoming integrated even in official places. The source mentions the controversy with reservists putting Third Temple flags on IDF tractors operating in Gaza.
Which was against IDF rules.
Right, and it led to an investigation. But that incident is pivotal for the authors because it shows this religious urgency is, permeating even secular military organizations. The Third Temple is moving beyond a fringe idea in their view.
And while all this is happening on the ground, the sources are screaming warnings about technology, which they see as the final control mechanism.
That's the convergence. They point specifically to what they call mark of the beast technology. They cite these huge economic shifts, like, the goal to own nothing by 2030 and be happy, or that AI will take most jobs by 2030.
So they see these as deliberate economic preparations.
Exactly. To make the future global control system viable. I mean, if you don't own property or have a job, you become instantly dependent on the system.
And a major piece of that control, according to the source, is the push for digital ID.
Absolutely. And squashing free speech. They focus on the push for digital ID and age verification as a regulatory crackdown on dissent. The source cites nearly 20 proposed bipartisan laws being pushed to get this done quickly.
So their analysis is that it doesn't matter which law passes.
They're all leading to the same end: digital control, traceability, and getting rid of any platform for non-approved viewpoints.
The narrative also suggests that while all these precise prophetic events are unfolding, the public is being deliberately distracted.
That is a key psychological theme for them. The authors assert that the global chaos politics, societal decay, all of it, is part of a plan by the god of this world, Satan, to keep people from focusing on biblical prophecy.
And they claim that the things that align with prophecy, like what's happening on the Temple Mount, are often kept quiet by the mainstream.
While the chaos is amplified, they warn very strongly that putting your hope in any politician, government, or country is, and I quote, idolatry.
And that strong statement really transitions us to the final, passionate warning in the source material, which emphasizes the extreme stakes of what they call the coming tribulation.
It's a dual message, really. On one hand, this convergence should bring comfort to believers because it signals the rapture is near, the end of suffering. On the other hand, it's a message of absolute terror for the unsaved, the start of the worst time the world has ever seen.
And the authors are not just warning of social change, they're invoking absolute terror, painting a picture of physical reality just shattering.
They are. The claims are specific, they're stark, and they're designed to show the stakes of refusing the system. The source warns of severe persecution, like being beheaded for refusing the mark.
And they define the mark pretty broadly.
Very broadly. They suggest it could be a physical mark, a Neuralink implant, a patch, or even specific mandatory vaccines.
The stakes are clearly existential and physical.
They are. The authors don't shy away from describing things that sound like they're out of a fantasy novel, but they present them as literal impending reality. They cite the return of giant Nephilim creatures.
Described as three-quarters demon.
Right, who supposedly roamed the earth before Noah, and they describe the biblical locusts, which they claim aren't insects at all. They're hybrid creatures with a human face, a lion's mouth and body, wings, and talons.
And these creatures will feed on people who will not be allowed to die.
That's the crucial, terrifying detail. And on top of all that, they add the appearance of 2 million of Satan's hell riders. This level of destruction and chaos is what the source says awaits those who aren't spiritually prepared.
So the source's final message is intensely personal. It focuses on what is tethering you, the listener, to this earth right now.
Precisely. The ultimate, most urgent message is to find security in Jesus Christ. They're extremely clear. Hoping in any man, politician, or government is defined as idolatry, and it will fail. They really implore the listener to confront the question of what specific ties are tethering them to this world. And if we just, connect this back to the bigger picture, the source material provides this deeply integrated framework where local political actions, like the shift in the Temple Mount status quo, are explicitly married to an apocalyptic timeline, a timeline that culminates in global digital control and judgment.
So what does this all mean for us, the listener? We've seen how deeply these narratives of faith, politics, and technology are woven together in this warning. For the authors, the temple prep, the power of figures like Ben Gavir and Trump, the coming of digital IDs, It's all part of the same prophecy unfolding in real time.
Designed to trap the unprepared.
And I think the real question this material forces us to confront is this. When an apocalyptic timeline becomes the main operating assumption for key political actors, the people actively changing the security landscape of Jerusalem or legislating global control mechanisms, how much of their policy is being driven by theological inevitability?
Instead of traditional geopolitical strategy.
Exactly. That collective, urgent belief in the Antichrist's imminent arrival, the thing the authors call inside news, that belief is itself a self-fulfilling, powerful force that is shaping our reality right now. Thanks for joining the deep dive. We encourage you to explore the underlying questions raised by the convergence of these signs. Until next time.